Good morning, everyone. Good Saturday morning. Yes, it is Saturday, not Sunday. I got the urge to merge. No, not quite. So I have a subject already picked out for the Sunday stream tomorrow morning, but I came across this yesterday as well, and I was just so curious to know how it works. I couldn't help myself. And I was like, I'm going to do a show tomorrow morning. That was Friday. Now it's Saturday. And here we are, rock me like a hurricane. But before we get into today's topic, today's ambush stream topic, continuing a quasi-series looking into healthcare matters when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism, and all that good stuff. Who's joining me for the surprise stream on a Saturday morning? Who's taking the time out of their weekend to watch this insanity? Your Reticulous Lunatic, perhaps appropriate enough. Good morning to you. Noah Essentio, good morning. Shady Grin, good morning. Zalbla, good morning. Long time no see, Zalbla. Hope you're doing well. Stoka, good morning. Who else is here? Ossan, good morning. Mike Savage, Blarg. Chicago Mike, good morning. Who else? Eric Grunstatter. Is it Grund or Grind? Which is the more correct way of pronouncing it? Or am I doing it justice in any way, shape, or form? Grind or Grund? Like an I or a U? I or you? There could be some poetry to that. Anyway, you let me know. Ryan R., good morning. Ken Elliott, good morning. Spoonie the Rebel, good morning. Stoka again. Hi, Scribe. Hi, Brett. Thank you so much. Stoka Brett Stoka. Hope you're having a good morning and appreciate it very much. Hope you enjoy the show. Keldrig, good morning. Spittlebuggies, good morning. Any birthdays today? Why, yes, mine. Today's your birthday? Oh, okay. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Spittlebuggies. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Spittlebuggies. Hope you're having a good birthday on this Saturday. Scanner Daffley, good morning. Tyrone Watermelon III, good morning. And 01 Portnoy, good morning. I and no H. Grindstatter. Eric Grindstatter. Okay, Grindstatter. I will attempt to correct myself. I make an effort to correct people's names because I don't want to be ist of one form or another. North of, good morning. Do you seriously have a nice mustache like that? I do have a mustache. I cannot claim to have the magnificence of my avatar. I'm not sure if I have the capability of growing something that magnificent. I've never really tried letting it go that long. I'm not quite sure the hair on my face works that way. Maybe someday when I'm much, much older and care less about my overall appearance, I'll just let it all grow out and then shave it down. But it would be nice, maybe. Renovatio, hi all, lurking mode. Well, either way, good morning. Anybody else before I get on with? Oh, Derek LaRue, good morning, and thank you so much again for your great generosity and support. Really appreciate it. Luke Skywalker 2, good morning. Charms 2, good morning. Are you related? You have the same last name, both of you. I don't know. Mother note before I forget, the top of the chat box, if you take a look, I have a couple of GoFundMes up there for our friends Maddie, who has recently been diagnosed with cancer and needs some help with some medical deductibles, which is no fun, of course, either way. And secondly, Angry Illinoisian, whose workers' comp is, or was, I'm not quite sure what the situation is right now, not covering necessities from injuries at work. So if you take a look at those, if you can donate to those, please do so. If you can't, that's fine. But if you can, share those out on social media. That is appreciated. And one more here before we move on to the show. It's going to come up here just in a second. Come on, StreamYard. You can do it. Thank you, Officer Buck Tud Russell. Appreciate it so much. Hello. Hello to you. Hello, hello, hello. So thank you so much. Hope you are having a good Saturday and enjoy the show. Robert Pincus. Oh, sorry you're late. Late for what? I did this out of the blue. There was no schedule. You're not late. You're perfectly on time. And just another guy. Ooh, Scribe being live and shit. Yeah, I know. It's a rare occurrence for me, isn't it? Anyway, so today's subject, which was almost the subject for the Sunday stream, but I already have something for the Sunday stream that's just as bewildering a concept, but we'll get into that tomorrow. Health equity and the role of racism conscious policymaking in collaboration with health affairs. Okay, so first and foremost, health equity obviously justified me updating the thumbnail. But my brain was caught for a second because when I first read the title, I thought it said race conscious policymaking, sort of like race conscious admissions in schools, affirmative action. Racism conscious policymaking. Racism conscious. And immediately my mind went to anti-racism rhetoric, wherein racism is in all things, at all times, in all people, in all systems. We have to be conscious of it right there because it's always there. Has to be. That's my thought. Keeverdam, hello and good morning. So I have no idea what racism conscious policymaking looks like in health. So let's find out. Let's see. Let me close this window. Let me start off with a few seconds for a sound test. This sucker runs just under an hour. I'm going to go for at most an hour and a half in real time unless something else compels me to do more. And we'll see what we find out. So let's get ready to learn, everyone. What exactly is racism conscious policymaking in health affairs, health equity, etc.?
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Warner.
Hi, Rachel. I'm Scribe.
I'm the Executive Director of the Leonard Davis Institute of Health Economics. Thank you so much for joining our seminar today. We are very pleased to co-host this panel with Health Affairs. This is being done in conjunction with their special issue entitled Tackling Structural Racism in Health.
Oh, tackling structural racism in health is my favorite sports maneuver.
Which just came out this week. Mm-hmm. With that, I want to introduce our panelists and get today's session started.
Okay.
Our first panelist is Shekinah Fashaw-Walters. She is an assistant professor at the University of Minnesota School of Public Health.
Okay, School of Public Health. Okay, so she's not a doctor. Okay. I mean, like a medical doctor. Okay.
Her research focuses on understanding inequities in aging while elucidating and explicitly naming racism as a fundamental determinant of health inequities.
That sounds like a predetermined conclusion before you've even begun your research. I don't know. I'm going to do research to prove that racism is this. Well, shouldn't you find out first what the thing is before you decide you know what the cause is? No, it's racism. I already know it's racism. I already know the inequities are caused by racism. I just have to find the evidence to back up my assertion. Okay.
She is the author of the jumping off point of today's seminar, an article called Proposing a Racism Conscious Approach to Policymaking and Healthcare Practices.
Oh, so we have the person who effectively wrote the book on the subject. Well, that's good.
Which was published in this month's issue of Health Affairs.
Okay.
Rakaya Yerby is the Kara J. Trott Professor of Health Law at the Moritz College of Law at the Ohio State University.
So not a medical doctor. Okay.
Where she also serves as professor at the College of Public Health. She is also co-founder of the Institute for Healing Justice and Equity.
Healing Justice and Equity. Oh, okay.
One of the co-founders of the Collaborative for Anti-Racism and Equity.
Anti-racism. Hey, do I know my stuff or do I know my stuff?
She also served as an advisor on this month's Health Affairs issue.
Okay.
Raynard Washington will be joining us momentarily, though he's not with us at the moment. But he is the director of the Public Health Department for the Mecklenburg County, North Carolina.
I'm seeing public health as a constant theme here, not medical health or medical doctors. Public health. Yeah, there was a long time ago in one of my older videos on curriculum of fear. there was this theme about public health, and someone got a degree in public health, and they were using this. It seemed to me, and it still seems to me to a certain extent, that public health was used as a cover, as a let's say an alias for social justice studies or social justice advocacy. So whenever I hear public health now and it's being pushed and it's associated with things like equity or, racism or something else, I keep thinking that public health was just a kinder, gentler way of saying social justice. But that might just be a theory of mine.
Where he is responsible for managing all public health and environmental health activities in the county. He previously served as the chief epidemiologist and deputy health commissioner for the city of Philadelphia, and as a health research scientist for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality.
Oh, so he is actually a medical doctor of a kind? Okay.
And today our panel will be moderated by Athene Venkatramani. He is an associate professor here at Penn in the Department of Medical Ethics and Health Policy. And he is a general internist. He's also
okay. A doctor. All right. Well, good. Finally.
So the director of the Opportunity for Health Lab. His research focuses on the life course origins of health and socioeconomic inequality. Athene, I will now turn the panel over to you.
Okay. Thanks, Rachel. Really excited to be here for this panel. There's been increasing interest around advancing health equity.
Yes, there has been. Oh boy, howdy has there been. A lot of equity. Oh, the equity.
Though racial disparities in many outcomes still persist.
Racial disparities. Okay. And as I've said many times before, and I may repeat again during the course of this, question that always comes to mind: does a disparity inherently indicate an inequity? I see a disparity. We need equity. Are you sure?
And the key challenges seem to be really formally defining what is meant by health equity.
Yes, please formally define what is meant by health equity, please.
And then operationalizing that definition into action. So today we're going to be talking about that.
Good.
And we're going to undergird this discussion around a new paper by Dr. Shekinah Fasha-Walters, which talks about a new concept, racism-conscious policy. So we're going to delve into that and what it means for practice and how it might inform our efforts to achieve health equity going forward.
Okay, well, first, hopefully, as you promised or indicated, you will define what health equity actually means, and we can proceed from there, but all right.
So Shekinah, I'll start with you. Thank you so much for your paper. And so you advocate for something that's new, racism-conscious policy, which is distinct from race-neutral approaches and race-conscious approaches.
Yes. Okay. This is why I wanted to watch this, is because I've never heard this term before. Apparently it's brand new. So we're on the cutting edge here, everybody. We're on the bleeding edge of health ideology, I guess. Good morning. And thank you, C. Thomas. Equity equals commie mystic talk. Well, usually it means equality of outcome. In the context of these conversations, it means equality of outcome. Now, if you're talking about equality of outcome insofar as the level of health care someone receives one to another in similar situations, yes, that should be hopefully what you're aiming for in healthcare, is that you have a person. They need health attention. They need medical attention. You give them as much and the best medical attention available as you would anybody else. That is the kind of health, quote unquote, equity, but that's not the equity we're talking about here. He's talking about seeing disparities amongst races. I don't know what disparities he means. I guess we'll have to find out. But yes, if you're talking about equality of outcome in healthcare, I don't know that anybody can reach equality of outcome. You can reach perhaps a kind of equality of treatment, right? Level of treatment, expertise, resources available, depending on where you're at or what the circumstances are. But outcome, You can treat two different people suffering from a heart attack in the exact same way and give them the best care, and one can have a positive outcome and the other can have a negative outcome. Sometimes that's just how the cookie crumbles. So again, they have to define what they mean by health equity for us before we move on from that.
Can you tell us a little bit about how those other approaches fall short and what your new proposed approach of racism conscious policy seeks to do?
Okay, so let me put my level set here. Okay, so race neutral policy, I would assume, means you are treating everybody equally regardless of race. That's just using, vocabulary and context clues. Okay. Race conscious policy means you are assessing someone in some way, shape, or form on the basis of their race, of the individual's race, and how you treat them, which I think would be called racist policy, but that aside. So racism conscious policy. Okay, so someone comes to you and they are ill, have a medical problem, and you look at them and conscious that racism exists, you do what with this person? I mean, what happens then?
Absolutely. I'm happy that we're starting here. And first, I'd like to acknowledge my thought partner and co-conspirator in this work, Dr.
I know she's smiling while she's saying this, but co-conspirator doesn't have a positive connotation in my mind when it comes to just about anything. It's just, especially when you're talking about something that's relatively serious, like healthcare. Maybe it's jokey. I don't know. It doesn't sound professional to me. I'd say colleague, right? Or just partner, or my co-writer or something, but co-conspirator.
Dr. Sydney McGuire, who's at Indiana University. And within our paper, we consider these three types of policies: race neutral policies, race conscious, or what we refer to as race-based policies, and racism conscious policies. And we talk about how these policies sort of fall along a spectrum that moves from equality to equity, where...
Okay, wait. What is a racism conscious policy? I thought this was a new concept. If it's a new concept, do they already exist somewhere? Are they being used somehow? Sorry, I'll back up a little bit.
Policies, race neutral policies, race conscious, or what we refer to as race-based policies, and racism conscious policies. And we talk about how these policies sort of fall along a spectrum that moves from equality to equity, where race neutral policies fall closer to the equality side of the spectrum. That really is everyone gets the same thing for the same outcomes, ideally.
Everything is the same things for the same outcomes. That's not, I mean, it depends on what kind of context we're talking about. If we're talking about opportunity in work or something, you're not going to get the equal outcome necessarily. There's no guarantee of that. Race neutral, you treat everybody the same, especially in healthcare. It's like you get the same level of care as anybody else, regardless of your race. You can't guarantee outcome in healthcare. It's the same thing as trying to guarantee an outcome in investing. There's always risk. There's always the possibility that something goes sideways for you or it goes perfectly fine for somebody else. That's life. That's just, there are no guarantees. I'm not quite sure what she means by that. I think you see, Thomas, you forget, Scribbles. These people don't define their terms for a specific reason, so they can dodge criticism and not get pinned and blamed. No. I understand that. I understand it. But unfortunately for me, I eternally hold out hope. I hold out hope that someone will give me at least a definition I can work with, right? If they set the standard, then I have at least something I can measure it against for the future, and vice versa. Now, the greatest one of all time, maybe not all time, but at least in my little sphere, was when Ibram X. Kendi was finally pinned down to define anti-racism. And it was a TEDx talk. It was a Zoom call. And as I've said many times before, kudos to the two ladies in interviewing him who asked him 3 times to define and or give an example of what anti-racism is. And his first 2 attempts were just large blocks of words saying nothing. And on the third, he finally just whittled it down to about 2 sentences worth. And I finally had my answer. So sometimes it can happen. It's not rare. I mean, it's not rare. It is rare It's not regular, but it can happen. That's what I'm hoping for. And since I've never heard of this term before, she's really the only one who can give us the definition. I'm excited. Unhealthfully so, which is kind of ironic given the subject matter.
And then racism conscious policies, which lands closer to the equity side, which really says folks are getting what they need for the outcomes that we most desire to see.
Wait. So race neutral is everybody's getting the same treatment for hopefully the same outcome. Okay. I'll grant you the hopefully part. I mean, you want everybody to be hopefully coming out of it well and not continually sick. Okay. But racism conscious policies do what again?
To the quality side of the spectrum, that really is everyone gets the same thing for the same outcomes, ideally.
Oh, sorry, ideally, not hopefully. Okay, that's race neutral.
And then racism conscious policies, which lands closer to the equity side, which really says folks are getting what they need for the outcomes that we most desire to see.
Wait. Sorry, I don't mean to do this, but I just want to make sure I got this. So what was race neutral again?
Who's at Indiana University. And within our paper, we consider these three types of policies: race neutral policies, race conscious, or what we refer to as race-based policies, and racism conscious policies. And we talk about how these policies sort of fall along a spectrum that moves from equality to equity, where race neutral policies fall closer to the equality side of the spectrum, that really is everyone gets the same thing for the same outcomes, ideally.
Everyone gets the same things for the same outcomes, ideally. Okay.
And then racism conscious policies, which lands closer to the equity side, which really says folks are getting what they need for the outcomes that we most desire to see.
So wait, in a race neutral policy, regardless of the individual situation, you're giving them the same thing than anybody else. There's no tailoring to someone's specific circumstance. There's no questioning of the patient as to what their medical history is, whatever. You wait. So when you're just treating a patient as a patient, you're not treating the patient as an individual. You're treating them as a monolith. But with racism conscious policies, you're treating the individual. Am I getting this right? Am I understanding this correctly? Okay, hopefully she'll expand because I'm completely confused right now. Also, before I miss here, a couple more hellos. Old Guy Gamer, good morning. Wisped, good morning. SWD40, good morning. Did I miss anybody else? I may have. If I did, I hope to see you in the chat later.
And race conscious or race-based policies sort of fall in the middle. I think before I sort of dive into describing these, I also want to note that this framework that we built out, ideally, we think it works for policies on all levels.
Oh, so it's an all-in-one solution? It is a magic bullet? Okay.
Big P policy.
Whoa.
Down to organizational policies.
Okay, that little glitch was the original recording. That was not me. So if she's roboting, I hope that doesn't persist.
Or practices. We also will refer to policymakers often throughout the article, maybe also.
Yeah, that's all glitching from her side. So apologies for those listening at home. I know when you hear that little roboting happening, it's irritating as heck. I have no control over it.
And so I want to note that when we're talking about policymakers, we're not just talking about elected officials. We're talking about everyone from legislative staffers to activists to researchers in the policies we propose in our papers to healthcare administrators. So
wait, activists are policymakers? When I say policymakers, I'm talking about a wide range of people, nobody specific. It could be anybody. Oh, that's helpful. Thank you, Keeverdam, for the happy, dancy, smiley Dogcat Fox. Oh, Dogcat Fox.
Wowie, wow.
That is a sultry P-Dog night, Dogcat Fox. Thank you so much, Kiever Dam. Hope you're having a good morning so far.
Just bearing those things in mind as we
Okay.
So a race neutral policy are policies that attempt to improve quality and outcomes for everyone, regardless of race.
Yes, race neutral. Yeah, race is not a factor in assessing someone for medical care. That is what I assume that means.
Don't consider the potential.
Okay, her video keeps chopping up. I'm going to back up a little bit on the off chance that I can somehow make it clear. I don't know. Thank you again, C. Thomas. An activist makes a poor policymaker. Influencing policy, sure. Making policy, probably not. So when she says activists fall in the category of policy makers, really? Okay.
For everyone, regardless of race, don't consider the potential and truly inevitable role that racism or even race plays.
Wait. They don't consider the inevitable role. So it is already, okay, this is the anti-racism thinking. Racism is an inevitable. Racism is a universal constant. It will always take place. It'll always be a factor. You can't escape it. So we've already condemned and convicted the entire healthcare industry and any individual doctor therein as being a racist. Okay, so yeah, we can't have race neutral policies because obviously racism is in everything.
In policy outcomes, or even more upstream in policy choices and the policy environment. Race neutral policies are really in the
oh my gosh.
Blind racism and colorblind racism uses non-racial factors such as income to explain racialized differences.
Colorblind racism. Colorblind racism. Colorblind. Okay, so there is no hope. There is no hope. We have to see race. We have to assess people on the basis of race. We have to use race as a factor of judgment. Colorblind racism. I'm taken back to the Coleman Hughes TEDx we looked at not too long ago, where he very effectively decimated the whole opposition to colorblindness. Okay, colorblind racism. Let's. Okay, and I apologize. Her video keeps chopping up, so we're losing words here. I have to make assumptions about what she's saying here and there. So we'll see. Sir Adamantine, scribe. Sir Adamantine, good morning.
Blind racism and colorblind racism uses non-racial factors such as income to explain racialized differences, but those racialized differences that we see, we don't take into account that those non-racial factors also have hints of racism manifesting within them and the differences that we see across them.
Wait. So if I'm not taking race into factor when assessing someone's needs, for example, let's talk about affirmative action. As Coleman Hughes talked about, what would be a better metric by which to measure someone's access to opportunity in life? Their race or their socioeconomic status? You know, what is a better fundamental indicator of where someone is or what opportunities someone has available to them in the world? What is a much more fair measure? Okay, so if I measure someone's needs based on their circumstance rather than their skin color, I'm being racist because my brain stops. I hit a wall. I hope our speaker describes or explains what she's talking about. We've got plenty of time for it.
Race neutral policies are guided by the idea that all, and as such, race and skin color do not matter. And although we believe this today, and we can go back and forth on what the evidence of this is.
We could, but we're not, are we? Okay. So your rejoinder is?
Although we believe this today, this was not always the case in our country.
And so we have to take what? The laws and the circumstances from the past of society and the bad old days and what? Assume the worst of everybody today?
So this policy type falls short in the fact that it doesn't consider contemporary forms of racism.
It doesn't. I'm having to fill in the blanks for her breaking up. Doesn't consider the contemporary forms of racism. The contemporary forms of, okay. Elevating or denigrating someone on the basis of their race. That is racism. However you're doing it, that is racism. If you have policies that explicitly do not make race a factor in assessment, that's racist how again?
And at best, it maintains the disparities that we see. And at worst, sometimes we see that it exacerbates disparities. So
oh my gosh.
We don't use the term race neutral to imply that there are no racialized impacts of these policies, but on the contrary, we might see many racialized impacts of these policies.
You may, it can, it should. Okay, like I say, I can't wait till she deep dives into what she's talking about. This is amazing.
The other type of policy we're talking about today are race or policies.
Okay, it's driving me nuts. Her signal keeps breaking up. I know you guys might think it's me. It's not. It's not me. It's her. I swears. Thank you, C. Thomas. She would rejoice if Jim Crow was back, but applied it the other direction. She is no better than a shaman trying to explain why trepanning is valid. I can make assumptions. I'm gonna listen to what she has to say. So far, nothing she said makes any sense whatsoever. Just on the summary level. Maybe there's something to it. But either way, I'm here to learn what exactly is a racism-conscious policy. I want an active example. This is something that I'm always begging for in things like this. I want an active example. You're at a hospital. You're on the ground. You are an administrator in a healthcare facility, and you are going to make and implement a racism-conscious policy. And that policy is what? How does it work? How does it affect the healthcare workers and or the patients in the hospital? That's what I want. Ultimately, I want that. If not something that's actually being used right now, a suggestion or an idealized circumstance. That's what I want. That's what I want to hear, just so I have something I can dig my teeth into.
And these intend to improve quality and outcomes, not for everyone, like race neutral policies, but explicit for or racially or ethnically minoritized groups.
Wait. Okay, gosh dang it, it keeps cutting out. So, race-neutral policies help everyone. Racism-conscious policies help specific demographics for better outcomes because of the demographic they fall in. So, barring further explanation, maybe we'll get it, racism-conscious policies are racist. Did I get that right? I'm going to back up, and again, apologies, even though I have no control over it, the breakup of her stream. Okay, let's try that again and try to fill in the blanks with our brains here.
To imply that there are no racialized impacts of these policies, but on the contrary, we might see many racialized impacts of these policies. The other type of policy we're talking about today are race or policies. And these intend to improve quality and outcomes, not for everyone, like race neutral policies, but explicit for or racially or ethnically minoritized groups. Am I freezing for anyone? I just got a notification that my internet is unstable. Great, this hasn't happened in a while. Can you hear me? Should I go off camera? Would that be better?
Yeah,
okay.
why don't we try that?
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. Sorry about that. So let's see. These race-based or race-conscious policies intend to improve quality for everyone, or don't intend to improve quality for everyone, but instead explicitly for one or more racially or ethnically minoritized groups.
Right. So it's a racist policy. It's not racism conscious. It's racist. It's racist by your own definition. Okay.
And they can be effective in their intent to improve outcomes for one particular group, but
demographic,
as Dr. Yerby might be able to speak to a little bit more, the 14th Amendment prohibits race-based discrimination. And because of that, any policy that targets a specific racial group it has a higher standard to meet in order to be considered non-discriminatory. So
no. Okay. The way you've described it so far, it is inherently discriminatory. And we're talking about health. We're talking about human health. We're talking about healthcare for people. And is she just describing something that is happening, like a warning, or is she advocating for this? Maybe I'm confused. Maybe I should stop for a second. Okay. Because what it sounds like to me is she's trying to push for healthcare policies that are inherently racist and complaining that the 14th Amendment is getting in the way of that. Do I have that right?
This is the first shortfall of a race-conscious policy. It's potentially illegal.
Well, okay, you know what? I at least appreciate her awareness of the situation. So I guess my question is, in trying to decipher this, is she advocating for her healthcare policies that help only people on the basis of their race, or is she just describing something that is taking place in the healthcare industry and shining a light on it? Maybe I've misunderstood the point of this.
And then if you all have been paying attention to the social side of our country and sort of the racial awakening we've been going through.
Yes, thank you, St. Floyd.
These sorts of policies can also be socially divisive. And I feel like all I need to say here is college admissions. And most of everyone here would understand what I'm talking about when I say socially divisive.
I think the socially divisive part is the legality part of it you just articulated. I think that would be the socially divisive part, the part where it violates the 14th Amendment and or just outside of a legal framework, demonstrably racist. Either one of those things, combination of the two, the intersection of the two, I think would make them divisive. Yes.
But I think the most important shortfall of this type of policy is that it fails to acknowledge that racism is the root cause of racialized inequities and not race.
Yes, race in and of itself has no agency. Race in and of itself is just a factor of differentiation amongst humans. You're right. Racism is what, in some way, shape, or form, creates racialized circumstance if someone's assessing people on the basis of their skin color. What you've described of racism-conscious policies so far is racist and racializes healthcare. So, again, I'm holding out hope she's simply describing something that's taking place rather than advocating for it. For whatever that's worth. Thank you, C. Thomas, once again. Oh, the horror. The Constitution prevents her terrible policy desires from being applied immediately. These insane segregationalists. I'm baffled so far. I'm really hoping I'm mistaken in what the point of this this presentation is. Okay, again, is she merely describing a trend taking place and giving it a name, or is she advocating for this actively? I mean, I can assume the latter, but I'm holding out hope for the former, at least for her sake.
And because of the lack of this recognition of racism as a root cause, race-based policies fail to address all levels of racism.
Okay, so you are advocating for it. Okay. Okay.
Which leaves racialized groups without full recourse for the historic and contemporary effects of racism.
So wait, if you implement a policy, healthcare or otherwise, that seeks to treat people differently on the basis of their race than people of another race, how are you not contributing to racialization? How are you not contributing to segregation in policy and treatment? How are you not contributing to the idea that this type of person needs to be treated differently than this type of person on the basis of their skin color, first and foremost? Okay, I don't have a PhD in public health. Is this question just absent from the thinking here?
So racism conscious policies are guided by this idea that if historically we've used race to create disadvantage, then now we should be able to use race to create advantage.
No. That you don't fight fire with fire. You don't solve racism by employing racism. This is amazing. She is completely, it's not like she's living in a dimension where she doesn't understand what it is that she's saying. She's completely aware of it, and she's fine with it, I guess.
But as Audre Lorde has said.
Oh, Audre Lorde. Audre, yeah, as we know, medical expert Audre Lorde.
The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house.
Gee. Okay, so wait, you're advocating for racist policies in order to combat racism, and yet the master's tools will not dismantle the master's house. Well, if the master's tools include racism, then what?
So using race to dismantle racialized inequities isn't going to work.
You're right. You are right. You are just perpetuating the problem, and it doesn't matter which race is benefiting one to the other on the. Okay, good. Okay, so then what are you talking? What? Okay, she's entirely aware of the contradiction in her own theory here, and yet she's still advocating for it. She wrote a whole paper on it. I can't wait to hear what comes next.
But Dr. McGuire and I posit that if we destroy the master's tools, correctly identifying them as racism, then the master's house or racialized inequities can no longer stand. So
what? Okay, I'm gonna need some more info on this. How does explicitly employing racism in healthcare policies destroy racism? Thank you, C. Thomas, again. She is a Gramscian confirmed. I don't know what that is. I do not know what that is. Is that a real word? Is that a combination of things? I am unaware of that piece of vocabulary. I might need a definition. But thank you, C. Thomas. This is okay. We're not even 10 minutes into this thing, and my brain is all over the place. Okay.
That's what leads us to racism conscious policies. And we see this as the way forward. Racism conscious policies account for the role of racism in policy choices in the policy environment.
And then turns around and uses racism as a counterpoint. Oh, is that it? Is it to balance the scales? Is that it? So, and I'm just guessing here. Okay, so I am a hospital administrator. I see in my statistics a disparity between racial groups in my hospital, whatever it is, a disparity, right? There's one number that's bigger than another number, whatever it is. And so now I'm going to implement a policy specifically to benefit the group at the lower end of the disparity, or in the, getting the short end of the stick of the disparity, let's say, in order to correct for that. Is that it? So I've recognized the racism based on statistical disparity using the God of the Gaps theory of statistical analysis. And now I'm going to balance the scales by intentionally benefiting people on the basis of race to make the numbers look better. That's where my mind is going right now with what a racism conscious policy looks like. Renovatio, Scribelite. Antonio Gramsci was a neo-Marxist who proposed the, quote, slow march through the institutions, unquote, model of infiltration into the system and take it over. Strangely enough, I don't believe I'd ever heard that name before. And C. Thomas, thank you again. I appreciate the clarification because these are things I don't know. Gramscian, a holder of the beliefs and tactics of Antonio Gramsci, a famous Marxist who called for a subversion of all non-Marxist institutions. Okay. between racism conscious policies and Gramscian ideology, I'm learning all types of things today. Thank you, C. Thomas, and thank you, Renovatio. Appreciate it. And also Wisp also gave it as well. Thank you. Okay, well, boy, I'm getting an education all over the place. I hope somebody else is here too.
And an impact.
All right, let me back up. I think either she cut out or I cut her off.
Then the master's house or racialized inequities can no longer stand. So that's what leads us to racism conscious policies. And we see this as the way forward. Racism conscious policies account for the role of racism in policy choices, in the policy environment, and in impact. It's guided by the idea, again, that it's racism and not race, and that addressing systemic and racialized inequities head on is what will help us to advance racial equity.
Right. Okay. So again, I see a disparity, I assume an inequity, and in order to correct it, I institute a policy that seeks to advantage people on the basis of their race, informed by the disparity that I've seen. And so it's positive racism, benevolent racism. That's what she's advocating for. That's what it sounds like.
It really acknowledges, names, and dismantles historic racism as well as contemporary racism.
Acknowledges names? What?
And engages and empowers the community to create a lasting change.
A lasting change of perpetual victimhood and correction based on race. Okay.
I think as a concrete example, I will share about the loan forgiveness example that we share within the paper.
Loan forgiveness? Like student loans or what?
So we all know that loan forgiveness was recently struck down by the Supreme Court.
Student loan forgiveness. Yes. Yeah, because the Biden administration was attempting to use a relatively obscure mechanism in law and overreach its meaning to try to forgive, billions or trillions of dollars in debt. Yeah, it was struck down because the executive was trying to effectively abuse its power. So, okay. Thank you, Empty Whiskey. This is also clearly a grift masquerading as intellectualism. This is one aspect of what's being produced right now. I've been looking at educational outcomes and things for years in this realm, and it just baffles me. I mean, it doesn't baffle me that somebody would come out of academia or whatever, having some goofy idea about how the world works and deciding they've found the answer. Someone who either hasn't lived enough life to know, or doesn't actually work within the industry that they're talking about, or just, castles in the air kind of thing. That doesn't surprise me so much. The problem is that constantly this stuff goes unquestioned. So, I'm not advocating for, people like our speaker to not, with ideas like these, to not speak out loud at all. My curiosity will be, given what she's laid out to us, given how demonstrably contradictory it is both to American law and the culture that we are supposed to be working towards post-Civil Rights Act, and just the logical fallacies in her argument to begin with, will anybody on the panel question her reasoning? This is the important part. It's not so much that somebody comes forward with a bad idea. The real question is, the other people in the room, the adults or otherwise, are they going to stop and hold her feet to the fire to explain how exactly this is supposed to work and why she thinks that her idea is so revolutionary that such a thing's never been thought of before or tried to be employed previously? Right. That's my curiosity. First, learning about what the proposal is and how bad it is. But unlike a TED Talk, there are other people here, presumably, to question her. Will they? Will the other professionals in the room question her?
I think for reasons not related particularly to this concept and the example that I want to share here, But if we were to think about loan forgiveness from a race neutral policy perspective, that would be us forgiving the same amount of student loans for everyone.
Yes. So what? You want, weren't you just saying earlier about colorblind racism, where you're substituting socioeconomic situation for race and still being racist? So, okay, forgiving everybody's loan for the same amount, no matter who you are, is one way of doing it.
If we were to think about it in a race-based or race-conscious perspective, that would be us forgiving loan forgiveness specifically for particular groups, like specifically for Black people.
I assume that's where you were going.
But in the iteration that we saw that was struck down, the policy would have provided $10,000 for everyone below a specific income threshold.
Yeah, you remember that 14th Amendment thing you were talking about before? Yeah, I mean, aside from the fact that the administration was overreaching its authority, even if it had been able to do that, it would still be bound by things like the 14th Amendment, and it couldn't just say, oh, we're going to forgive the loans of specific people on the basis of their race. Either way, yeah. So we're still running up against the law.
And an additional $10,000 to those who received a Pell Grant. And the reason that we argue that this is racism conscious is because this recognizes that a disproportionate share of minoritized groups qualify for these Pell Grants because of centuries of structural inequity within this country that lead to this exceptional financial need.
How is that not colorblind racism as you previously described it? Right. Colorblind racism is that you're substituting race for other factors that you assume to be tied to someone on the basis of their race, and thus, elevating or denigrating them because of those factors that you assume are tied to race. Well, now you're assuming that someone with a Pell Grant must be a racialized minority, so give them a bonus. Okay. I mean, this is your presentation. I'm just listening along.
I'll pause there.
Okay.
Shekinah, thank you for that, and both for kind of giving us the theory of this, as well as undergirding it with this example of loan forgiveness, which I'm sure is top of mind still for many of us.
I don't believe that was actually a very actionable example or comparison. Loan forgiveness versus healthcare. I didn't see the connection, but that was her example. So now the question is, again, is anyone else in the room going to question her or point out the inherent problems with her theory?
You touched on something else, which is top of mind, and I want to turn to Ruqayyah here to kind of delve into this a little bit more. So this idea of a racism-conscious policy approach might be even more important in light of what the Supreme Court has decided.
Oh, okay. I mean, I'll see what he says, but this already sounds like he's a true believer going in.
Around the use of race in college admission decisions, as well as the use of race in prioritizing specific types of patients or groups of patients for COVID-19 therapeutics.
What?
So can you talk to us about how these Supreme Court decisions will be felt in healthcare, and what the implications are for health policy, especially as it relates to what we just heard from Shekinah?
Wait. Doing away with race-conscious admissions policies affecting healthcare. Okay. I mean, I think that might have been the subject of a previous video. I don't remember exactly what the connection was, except for something to the effect of the aesthetics of the potential doctors you may get in the future if they're not allowed medical opportunities in college on the basis of their race or something like that.
Yes, thank you for that. So what is important to note about the Supreme Court's decision in the Students for Fair Admissions is that it explicitly was limited to college admissions.
Well, yes, but also effectively to diversity and inclusion practices in organizations that accept federal money, which includes some businesses with government contracts, but those were already in place purportedly. It just shored up the idea that you can't give someone special treatment on the basis of their race under Title VI and the 14th Amendment. But yeah, okay, the case was about college admissions, and
there were questions before the court about whether you could take race into account as one of many factors.
One drop of poison taints the entire soup. The one of many factors thing is such a weak response to the idea of using race in any way, shape, or form as a formal assessment of someone's value. That already doesn't fly with me in any way, shape, or form.
In terms of medical schools, but the court did not answer that question.
Wait, what? No. Is a medical school a college? Does it accept federal funding? Then you can't use rate. Wait, what? Wait. Back up.
Important to know about the Supreme Court's decision in the Students for Fair Admissions is that it explicitly was limited to college admissions. There were questions before the court about whether you could take race into account as one of many factors in terms of medical schools, but the court did not answer that question.
What do you mean in terms of medical school? Did I miss something? What do you mean? I mean, I read the entire decision the day of. Is there an exception for medical schools when it comes to race-based admissions? Or race-conscious admissions? Did I miss that part somewhere?
And so we have to rely on what the court explicitly said, which is too limited to college admissions. But they also said that you still can use race-based programs to do away with governmentally imposed racial discrimination.
Governmentally imposed racial discrimination. You want to give me an example? Maybe I'm forgetting something here. What, like a race-based program, such as what?
And so that really connects to this theory that Shekinah put forward and her other co-author around racism conscious policies, right? Those are the policies that we want to adopt to address and do away with governmentally imposed racial discrimination.
Affirmative action was governmentally imposed racial discrimination, insofar as the government allowed it to exist and persist for many, many, many years, because it used race as an assessment factor in college admissions. The Supreme Court did away with official, government-sanctioned racial discrimination in education. So you should be celebrating that, right?
Now, the other case that you mentioned, the Roberts v. McDonald's case.
The Roberts v. Who mentioned? Are you talking about the student loan? Wait, what?
That was a case brought by a Cornell professor challenging the New York State's use or discussion of using race as one of the factors to prioritize access to COVID-19.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, somebody mentioned the COVID thing, and I didn't have any context for that. Okay.
Justice Alito, in the opinion, denying certification of the case, mentioned that it would not, the reference to longstanding systemic health and social inequities would not have sufficed the state to use race-based in their discussions.
Yeah, because we're trying to do away with assessing people on the basis of race. Yeah, you don't defeat bad acts of the past by repeating the bad acts. That was the whole point of the Civil Rights Act, drawing a line and saying no longer. Okay.
So not a decision, but a discussion about the use of race. And what I see putting together both of those decisions and the 14th Amendment's requirement about equal protection and Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which says you cannot racially discriminate, is that healthcare facilities, states, still have a legal duty to ensure that everyone gets equal access to care, which is not happening.
Okay. And you have examples of this that show outright racism taking place, right? Not just a statistical disparity. That in and of itself isn't necessarily evidence of anything except that there is a difference. What lies between that disparity? You have to have proof of that. So you've got something other than simple statistical disparities, right? Disparities that couldn't possibly be explained by population density or count or some other factor. Only skin color, you've got that evidence.
And so in order to address that, what they need to do is to adopt policies that ensure racial and ethnic minorities get equal access to care.
Give me an active example. Give me a hospital or a state or something where this policy that you're proposing would fix the quote unquote problem.
Get equal admissions to medical school and continue.
Whoa, admission. Whoa, hold the phone. Equal admissions to medical school. Okay. What? Where? Okay. Equal or equitable healthcare is one thing. Equal access to medical school. So you want to bring back affirmative action, race-conscious admissions in colleges, specifically to medical schools. You want it. You're the one saying that getting rid of racism is good, but you want racism to exist in medical schools. If we can't have it in regular colleges and universities, we need it in medical schools. Why?
Continue to try to repair the harm caused by both historical and modern day racial discrimination.
By employing and instituting further racial discrimination, that's what you're proposing.
And one way to do that is by adopting racism-conscious policies that will eliminate governmentally sponsored and imposed racial discrimination.
If you impose a policy that favors some people on the basis of their race and disfavors other people on the basis of their race, and the government does not swoop in and penalize you for that, and you get away with it, what would that be called? Would that be called government-sponsored racism by any chance? What? Am I... just... Okay.
Kaya, thank you so much for that.
Really? Is that a thank you? No critical analysis at all? Nothing that sort of piques your interest for explanation or example? Nothing? Nothing worth questioning? Is that coming later? I really hope that's coming later.
And I'm sure we're going to be delving in further with the audience Q&A into some of these concepts.
Okay.
Reynard, I want to turn to you. So there's the theoretical aspect of this, there's the legal aspect, and then all of this intersects in your job in the public health department with the practical aspect. So I wanted to get a sense of, in your role as a county health official, you're kind of making a lot of decisions about the allocation of resources and public.
And if he happened to be as an official in his official capacity endorsing such things, would that not be government-sponsored racism? Okay, let me back up. I cut him off. Hoi. Try that again.
Aspect of this, there's the legal aspect, and then all of this intersects in your job in the public health department with the practical aspect. So I wanted to get a sense of, in your role as a county health official, you're kind of making a lot of decisions about the allocation of resources and public health policy. how are these three types of approaching health equity policy, race neutral, race based, and race conscious and racism conscious, how do they play out in your work? And what are the practicalities that we need to be aware of to be able to leverage and deploy a racism conscious approach?
The question is far too loaded with a whole bunch of different things that could allow the respondent, whether they mean to or not, to drift off into different directions. When you ask a question, just be very, very short, brief, and to the point on it. How would a racism conscious policy work in your job, in your realm? How would you implement a racism conscious policy? Or give us an example of a racism conscious policy that you would implement. And stop. Don't fluff it up. Don't go all over the place. Don't lead in with 17 different subjects. Just, I know I've become quite the panel discussion snob over the years.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for that question, and great to be with you all this afternoon. I think the reality is for us, particularly in public health and local public health, is that we are specifically focused on making good health achievable for everybody in our community.
Okay.
For us, that is truly sort of the vision and definition of health equity.
Okay. And you just had someone suggest that healthcare should be metered based on someone's skin color. So, given your mission statement, how do you square that circle?
When it comes to the issue of race, of course, race plays into a number of aspects of how we approach our work, both in terms of how we understand patterns and health outcomes, as well as access to resources. And so when we make decisions here locally, it comes up very often that we have to, again, ensure that our programs, our actions, our policies are really not creating further disparities that we observe by race. And so,
but what if they inherently require disparities in treatment because of skin color? That's what our speaker has suggested. Having a policy that assesses someone's needs first and foremost on the basis of their race, and then giving them more or less attention as a result. So, again, not to be too repetitive, but the question stands: how do you put that alongside your mission statement and still make it work?
One of the ways essential to us being able to even have this conversation about race in general, whether it be thinking about policies that are race neutral or race conscious, is really this notion of having data to understand differences by race. And so,
differences, but you mean disparities? Okay. And also, we're not talking about race neutral and race conscious. We're talking about racism conscious.
For us, much of our work in practice is driven by our ability to be able to determine and detect differences. And then...
Wait. Differences. Detecting a difference does not inherently mean you then assign a value to it. You have to find a problem to solve, not just say there's a difference and assume a problem. Or is that what you're doing?
As we think about how we allocate resources and policies that we might set up, ensuring that we do a robust analysis on the potential impacts of those things to see whether or not they're going to have an effect on racial disparities, either a neutral effect or which happens in many cases where we do have, as has been discussed already.
No. Okay. Doing analysis of the potential impact of something, trying to address a disparity. No. The first thing should be, what does the disparity actually say? What causes that disparity? What is the root cause of that disparity? Is it something individually identifiable? Is a combination of things? Then you can't address a disparity until you know what's causing it. And then if you can assess whether or not what's causing the disparity is actually a problem to be solved. That should be the first thing. Somebody says, this number is bigger than this number. The question is why first. And if you can determine that the why is an actionable injustice taking place, well, then you're off to the races. But until you get to that point, it's just a difference in numbers. So, okay.
we pass policies that are for the good of everybody.
No. This is not a policy that's good for everybody. This is a policy that's good for some and not others. She just told us this.
And then in some cases, though, certainly and we see this happen in reality because you see, let's just say, for example, you institute policy that focuses on improving access to prenatal care.
Improving access to prenatal care. Okay. People, human beings, women, they get pregnant. Okay? Regardless of their race, women occasionally get pregnant. Yes?
You start to see or contraception, for example.
Wait, prenatal care or contraception? I mean, one of these is not like the other. What?
And we start to see declines at the population level and outcomes that we are hoping to see improvements in, but we don't see the gap between racial groups closing. And so,
wait, I'm confused. In the use of contraception, in access to prenatal care, what?
For us, the practical parts of this is really the tracking and making sure that we are doing these kinds of analyses and assessments to make sure that even if we are taking a race-neutral policy approach, that it's not having an unintended consequence, but also that we are actually making progress on closing the gaps. And so,
okay. I was hopeful there for a second. He was talking about one example of this, and then all over the place, no definition, no specificity. Okay. Either contraception or prenatal care and disparities thereof stuff. Okay.
Several other examples that I'm looking forward to discuss.
I hope you have them, and I hope we do discuss them
as we get into the Q&A. But I think globally, it is a delicate balance, and particularly being in a local government official capacity, as has already been described, really leaning into race-specific policies is challenging because
the law.
It can be a double-edged sword, both in terms of trying to have an intended impact, but also can also have an unintended negative consequence or a stigma associated with a group of people. And so I think there's a level of consciousness that we all use outside of the political sort of considerations.
Do you have an example of what you are talking about? What is a policy that you either have or have attempted to implement that fell into this quagmire? I'd love to know.
But just in general, for us to be able to make sure that we're not causing harm while we're trying to do good.
Or breaking the law and setting yourselves up for liability as an institution in some way, shape, or form, maybe? Like violating the Constitution or somebody's civil rights in the process. I can only imagine when you're talking about setting policy based on race.
And so I'll stop there and then look forward to more discussion about these.
Okay.
Raynard, thank you so much. It's incredibly helpful to hear what the constraints and the parameters that you're dealing with.
No, that wasn't helpful at all. It told us almost nothing about anything. One of my other pet peeves about panel discussions and very friendly moderators is giving credit where it is not due in the course of a discussion. If someone has not clarified something, if someone's not actually provided any substantive irate bear information on the subject that they're there to discuss, you don't celebrate their lack of success. You do a follow-up question. Because, this is something else that I don't want to sound like too much of a snob. I get it. If I was on a panel discussion about a subject that even I was very well versed in, I could have stage fright. My brain can go in 3 different directions at once. I might get jumbled up. I might not be focused. Maybe the question I was asked wasn't focused enough to keep me on track. I have a brain that goes everywhere, right? If I don't have something to focus in on specifically, sometimes I wander. All right. It's up to the moderator to bring the person back to the point, or if they realize that their question was too open-ended, to refine it down and not give credit where it isn't due for information not actually provided. So if you're the moderator of a panel discussion, if you find yourself as a moderator or an interviewer or something in the future, and you're actually wanting to elicit from your panel members useful information or a clear answer or something, don't be afraid to follow up. Extend the benefit of the doubt that maybe your question was too amorphous, or maybe the person got excited or whatever. Whittle it down, do a follow-up, and don't celebrate what isn't actually provided. Just try to remain neutral. But anyway, that's your Scribe Light moment of panel moderator critique.
On a day-to-day basis to make policy and how that intersects with this broader approach. There are a couple things that came out there that that I wanted to kind of pull on.
Oh, a follow-up. Okay. Okay. I don't take it back. It's still advice that I give, but okay. All right, speaker. Sorry, moderator. Lay it on us.
So Shekinah, this goes back to you, but I would love to hear from all three of you about this.
No, okay, well, just specify one. If you leave it open to everybody, nobody's going to talk.
So some of the foundational principles in racism-conscious policymaking that you outline in your paper involves engaging and centering the communities that are affected the most.
Centering the communities that are affected.
Most by a given problem that you're trying to solve. And then having this kind of, going back to Reynard's point about data, continuous and ongoing evidence evaluation and policy analysis.
Yes.
Both of those things are really hard to do even in a vacuum.
Yeah, but if you want to do it right, it's worth the effort. P-Dog Night! It's P-Dog Night. We already heard from P-Dog Night earlier. Remember, everybody?
Wowie, wow.
Yes, it is P-Dog Night, Lawyer Dog, in the house, as the kids say. If you're not aware of P-Dog Night, be sure to look him up on YouTube and check out his morning show, The Morning Night Live, Monday through Friday. I believe it still is at 7 a.m. Pacific time, 10 a.m. Eastern, and 9 Central. Do I have that right? I don't know anymore. Time zones. If it's not West Coast or East Coast, I'm kind of up in the air, but that's my best plug for that. So good morning, P-Dog. Yeah, we're talking about racism-conscious healthcare policy, which is basically just racist policy. Anyway, so our speaker, our moderator, pardon me, was going to pull on a thread.
So some of the foundational principles in racism-conscious policymaking that you outline in your paper involves engaging and centering the communities that are affected the most by a given problem that you're trying to solve.
Granted that you've actually shown there's a problem and not simply a statistical inequity, but okay.
And then having this kind of, going back to Reynard's point about data, continuous and ongoing evidence evaluation and policy analysis.
Okay.
Both of those things are really hard to do even in a vacuum. And so at the level of a policymaker, I'd be interested to hear how you imagine that working. And I think all of you, I'd love to hear an answer for this. And the second part of this.
No. One at a time. Dude, you're giving them too many escape hatches. One at a time. How does a policy like this purportedly is supposed to work? Tell us how it's supposed to work. Just, and stop. And the second part, you can come back around as a follow-up. If you give them too many things at once, you just give them opportunities to wander. They may wander anyway, but you're giving them excuses to wander without penalty. That's the issue. Oh, man.
And so at the level of a policymaker, I'd be interested to hear how you imagine that working. And I think all of you, I'd love to hear an answer for this. And the second part of this is intermittently, there's equality of access to care, equality of outcomes. These are things that have come up in some of the answers to the questions that we've had so far. How do we actually define the objective of what we're trying to solve? Because it seems pretty critical in being able to leverage this framework.
Again, these should have been two separate questions. He's giving them too much room to maneuver. I would have started with his part 2 first, and then asked about how to actually implement it, because you're effectively asking for a definition before or after you've already asked for how you'd implement it. But all right, well, let's see what we get out of that.
So maybe we can start with you, Shekinah, just talking about these foundational principles in racism-conscious policymaking, specifically the engagement piece and the evaluation piece.
Sure thing. And I'm going to try my camera. Hopefully it's cleared up a little bit, but if it starts glitching, someone send a chat and let me know. So I think both of those questions are well connected to one another, because when we're talking about how we define the objective of what our policies should be focusing on or what we should be pursuing, at the heart of that should be the community.
At the heart of it should be positive health outcomes for the patient. A patient is not a community. A patient does not represent a community. A patient represents their own little world of healthcare and health needs. This is the problem with racial identitarianism. So you're taking your eye off the proverbial ball. You're looking at a demographic rather than thinking about the patient. Unless we're somewhere else on what we're supposed to be talking about here. Because we keep talking about public health. I mean, I would love an example. If we're not talking about a policy within a hospital or something, if we're talking about some extra dimension of this public health, okay, give me a public health policy that falls within this category.
And so when we're talking about continuous engagement with the community and centering their voices, we're really talking about shifting and sharing, but mostly shifting the power and the authority of what happens with our political agendas back to the people that these political agendas and policy agendas are all about.
What are you talking about? An example. Give me an example, a real world example or a hypothetical proposal of what you are talking about.
And so that's one of the reasons that we consider this a foundational principle, is because we have to have the right folks at the table. And too often the right communities and the folks that we're making these policies are are left from those tables.
The right folks. What defines someone as being the correct type of person to be at the table? Given the subject matter, I can only guess.
And then I think that Reynard spoke really well to the importance of this ongoing evidence evaluation.
Yeah, evidence evaluation. You have evidence for an inequity that needs to be addressed by policy due to disparities in statistics.
Policy analysis and understanding what the policy is doing, whether there are unintended consequences or intended consequences, and what those look like.
Yeah.
And I think one of the really important pieces here that I like to pull the thread on a bit is realizing that both racism and politics are dynamic. And
racism and politics are dynamic. I don't know. I always thought of racism as fairly static. You're evaluating the worth or value of somebody on the basis of their skin color. And how you decide to apply that to different aspects of the world are racist, but it all resolves back down to the same way of thinking. So is that okay? Racism is always changing, huh?
And they change with time. And so
see, here's the racism doesn't change with time. Okay. The labeling changes with time, right? It's like, here is a whites only water fountain and a blacks only water fountain. This is a blacks only space on campus because we need a safe space to avoid the trauma, the racial battle fatigue of simply existing. Okay, it's the exact same thing. The mechanism does not change. You can package it however you want, right? You can call it DEI, you can call it racism conscious policymaking. It all comes back to the same twisted and rotten root of assessing someone's value and worth on the basis of their skin color and dividing people along those lines. That's it. There's nothing dynamic about it. But I mean, if you want to think so, okay.
The way that we see racism manifest in certain outcomes or communities is going to look different depending on the time that we're in. It's going to look different depending on the context that we're in. And so one policy that works in one area or in one healthcare setting might not work in another. And we have to be really intentional about understanding that.
Nothing you've said actually addresses the question.
Yeah.
Okay, you've effectively avoided answering either question. Okay, yeah, the moderator really should have focused in and been very specific. Oh, well.
I'll jump in. What I love about the community engagement aspect of it is that it connects to the work that Professor Lindsay Wiley, Seema Mohapatra, Emily Benfer, and I have done.
Oh, it connects to, okay, so you're making this about you. Okay.
Including Brietta Clark around health justice.
Health justice. So sort of like art on the last TEDx or justice in general. You start putting any modifier in front of things like art or justice, it starts possibly not being that necessarily or being turned into something completely different.
We often talk about health equity, getting each individual to their best health outcome.
Is that what health equity is? Okay.
But health justice requires us to actually begin to address oppression and discrimination.
You want to address discrimination with a racism-conscious policy that evaluates people's needs on the basis of their race. Got it.
Right. And so that includes both racism and includes sexism, ableism, and includes discrimination against those who are LGBTQIA. But what it does is center the community and
the community, because each one of these categories is a monolith. Obviously, there is no difference therein. Okay.
Change should be community driven. And so that is key to us if we're talking about racism conscious programs or other intersectionality approaches that we can address.
Okay.
One thing I do want to add to this discussion, which we didn't raise initially.
So you're bringing up something that's absolutely irrelevant to the topic at hand. Okay. Does it relate back to a paper that you wrote?
But I see it in the questions. Is this discussion about racism and racism conscious policies and how will it impact different groups?
Well, if you're going to assess people's medical needs and favor some over others on the basis of their skin color, it's going to affect some positively and others negatively because of their race. Racial discrimination. Racism. I mean, racism-conscious policies seem to be very conscious of the fact that they're employing racism.
Racism, which I talk about more in terms of racial discrimination because of my law focus, harms everyone.
Does it? Then why are you advocating for its use in health outcomes?
In the US. So it harms all racial groups. It just
demographics, not groups. Races are not groups. A Texan does not fall in the same group as a Polak simply because they're both white. Stop it.
Proportionally harms people of color. And so if we're talking about racism conscious policies, it has the potential to improve the health and the outcomes of everybody. And
how? She just said you're going to assess people's needs in health on the basis of their race. So some people are going to receive more health attention than others on the basis of their race. There will be a primary VIP lane for some on the basis of race. Shall I bring up the image of the whites only drinking fountain and the blacks only drinking fountain? It's the same thing.
The US, white, black, Asian, Native American. Furthermore, what it does is it allows us to begin to break out the harm that is suffered by each group, because as Shekinah has mentioned, it could be different in terms of the harm and different in terms of the solutions.
I would love to be given a specific example of a harm that will be addressed by racism-conscious policymaking. But in that vein, I'm at the hour-and-a-half mark, and I want to do other things with my Saturday. So I guess the question is, going forward, should I do a part 2 on this? Should we continue with this or not? You guys let me know in the comments. I'll take chat questions now or chat comments now. But I'm gonna at least sit on it a day or two until at least Monday, because I've already got my Sunday planned out. But let me know in the comments if you haven't already said so otherwise. But for a moment here, I will look at the chat. So if you have anything you'd like to say in the next couple of minutes, let me know. You're ridiculous lunatic. LOL scribe, not the racial battle fatigue. That is one of my favorite new phrases that talk we looked at brought up. Racial battle fatigue. It's so good. So good. So good. I'll probably remember that longer than I do racism conscious, because I keep wanting to say race conscious policies because of affirmative action, but racism conscious. Renovatio, center, discriminate in favor of this group against another group based upon their birth characteristics. Yeah, we want to center the community. Right. You want to intentionally single out this type of person for that kind of treatment, whatever it is. It's anyway. Let's see. Anything else before I Shady Grin, I forbid you from not entertaining me for the rest of your Saturday. Just kidding. Have a great Saturday service. Thank you, Shady Grin. I will attempt to. But anyway, guys, I gotta take a break. I gotta not only stand up, but also move around and do something else with my brain for a bit after this. So again, let me know in the comments what you thought about this. Should I do a part 2? Have any other observations? Maybe there's somebody in the audience from the public health realm who can give some more insight into possibly what they're talking about or otherwise. I'd appreciate that as well. Programming notes. Tomorrow, Sunday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, will be the Sunday stream, where I'll look at a completely different topic about education. It's going to be about education, and specifically how to correctly staff your schools. Yes, we're going to look at something from an official, I guess, state organization, as the sirens are coming for me. I don't know if you can hear that in the background, regarding how to correctly staff your schools. Can you imagine by what basis a correct staffing is assessed? I guess we'll find out tomorrow. Also, I am scheduled to appear tomorrow as well at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Midnight's Edge After Dark channel with Tom Connors and the rest of the crew as we go over the shit list. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this week's top 5 list discussion will be best World War II movies of all time in honor of Veterans Day. I believe that is the subject. That may change. I don't know, but that's last I knew. That's what I was submitting selections for. So look forward to that tomorrow. Midnight's Edge After Dark, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Moderators, thank you so much for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated, either to myself or to the GoFundMe's pinned at the top of the chat box, thank you guys so much for your generosity. I really do appreciate it. Before I leave, there's also a Discord effectively about this channel. So if you'd like to join the Discord, you just have to click on the link that I put into the chat box, and you'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you have to say the secret word. The secret word tells me and my moderators that you actually watch the stream. And today's secret word is governmentally. Yes, governmently is today's secret word. That's all you have to say. Hello, governmentally. And you too can join the Discord and join in on all the wonderful discussions and goofing around that takes place there. But with that, everybody, I hope you have a good rest of your Saturday, a good rest of your weekend. I hope you have a good week ahead of you if I don't see you Sunday, and I hope you are all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon. Regardless of whatever the policy is, please get well soon. And I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.